What do you think is the single most important thing that's helped you to really grow that quickly?
It's the who, not how. It's putting the teams in place to let the business run without you. You see a lot of firm owners that are in that 3 to 500K revenue range where they really don't have a business. They instead really have just a high paying job, right? Because if they decide to take a week off and go on a honeymoon or go on vacation, they're not making money. Versus you have to get to that $1 million range and have 4 or 5 employees under you to have the business function somewhat while you're gone so that you can enjoy what you built in the first place.
Welcome to the Seven Figure Accounting Podcast. I am super excited to have with me today someone that has grown their firm rapidly, and we are going to learn a lot today. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Nick, thanks for having me.
Ryan, do you want to just introduce yourself to our listeners for people that don't know who you are? Do you want to just give us a little bit of backstory about your business, what got you into the accounting industry?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Bakke. I run a little over a $3 million CPA firm, fully remote, niched in the real estate investor community. So we help multifamily investors, single family, short-term rental, all types of real estate. You name it, we've seen it and done it before. What really got me into accounting was accounting. I've learned to be the language of business. But even before that, like I'll never forget, my dad worked as an electrician for 40 years. He worked for the same company for 40 years. He just retired this past year. And I was in 7th or 8th grade and I came home with a math score, a good math test. And I remember my dad saying, "Well, that's great, son. You're going to get to work with your brain instead of your hands and back like I had to." And I always knew that I was going to do something in like a corporate field and environment. And I didn't really know what. I took business classes in accounting in high school and I liked it and decided to roll in an accountancy program. And I double majored in accounting and finance. What's funny too, I always grew up going to really small schools. So K through 8, we had 13 kids. It was the same kids the entire time for the most part. My dad used to make a joke. He said that I'm top 10 in my class because there's only 13 kids there. And then high school, same thing, really small. College, we had 20 kids per class. There's 4 accounting students in my graduating class. And I remember my goal was to get into a Big 4 firm. And I knew going to a small Christian college where at U of I or Penn State or Alabama, the Big 4 were pitching tents there. And I applied to Deloitte 27 times before I got an interview at Deloitte. And I knew Deloitte would be the level set that I needed for my career. And it would almost be a springboard to be equal to your Penn State alum, your U of I alum. And so I got the job at Deloitte and became at the time the youngest CPA in the state of Illinois. I was 21 years old and some age when I got my license, my CPA license. And about a year and a half into Deloitte, I realized that I was helping people who were already rich and wealthy become even more rich and wealthy. And I decided that I didn't want to help the everyday person, but I wanted to help the person in their family that was going to change their family tree. And that was when I started planning my Shawshank Redemption of an escape plan, where I started, doing business on the side and moonlighting. And eventually that first year I made $100,000 in revenue, and it gave me the confidence to go out and do it full time. So after that first year, this first year, 100K, 860,000 the next year, and 1.6 million the year after that. And then this past year, we did a little over $3 million in revenue.
So that's a huge rise. I mean, from going out on your own and starting with 100,000 right up to, 3.1, that's a rapid rise in 4 years. This podcast was built for firm owners to teach them the tactics and strategies to get over the million. And you did that almost in the first year. So I'm excited to dig into that a little bit today. So getting into accounting, was there a real passion for it that you got with Deloitte and then went out on your own, or is it more other reasons why, you wanted to go out and build your own firm? What was the real trigger to wanting to do that?
So I went into Deloitte thinking I was going to scale the ladder and eventually become partner or, bounce out after I became manager to work at private accounting. And it wasn't until we were having an event on one of the partners' rooftops, a condo in Chicago, $3 million condo in Chicago, and we were sitting next to him having drinks, and he was telling me a story. He goes, "Yeah, making partner is great, and it's a lot of money, but my daughter just turned 18, and I've only been to 3 of her soccer games in her entire
Wow.
life." And I thought, I'm like, man, I don't want that to be me, right? Like, no matter the amount of money in the world, I do not want to sit there and say that my daughter just became a legal adult and I've only been to 3 of her games ever.
Mm.
And that was the mindset shift of like, I have to get out of here quicker than I thought. It wasn't because the team was bad. It wasn't, of course there's the big four culture and you work a ton of hours, but it wasn't that I was running away from something. I was just running towards something that was a lot better for me. And that's what made me take the step and the leap of faith to leave big four and go out on my own.
And I did that at a similar age to you. So my question to you is, that's really young. I mean, to make that decision to go and set up your own firm, not with huge amounts of experience. You've got experience, but not a huge amount. What did it take to take that leap of confidence in yourself? Obviously, you built that 100 grand of fees, but what made you think, no, I can actually do this? I'm young. I've got what it takes to actually compete and to make a success of this.
Yeah, I mean, the first step, in my opinion, is you should find mentors or somebody that's going to coach and guide you throughout the process. So I had a lot of few good mentors at the time, other real estate CPAs, and it takes me back to a quote by it was was it Isaac Newton? Isaac Newton said, if I could see past the next man, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants.
Hmm.
Or is it Napoleon Bonaparte? One of the two. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I could see beyond the next person, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. So I didn't have to go out and learn it on my own. Sure, there's some things that I did learn on my own that I can teach that I would never do again, processes, sales systems, things like that. But I can gain the collective wisdom of people that have already gone out and done it. And, they have the arrows in their back to show for it, and learn from their mistakes and their triumphs, right? And that to me gave me the confidence to go out and do it on my own. And then, of course, you have errors and emissions insurance in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah. So what made you go after the real estate niche then? Was that something that you're doing at Deloitte, or what really got you to, super focused and hyper, niched from day one?
I knew there was a market because of, at the time, bigger pockets, especially after COVID, like bigger pockets was booming, and the wanting to not work for somebody else and kind of be your own boss and have the freedom. Like the real estate trend was picking up greatly at the time that I left. But it was a little bit before that when I worked at my first public accounting job at a small firm. I was doing 2 tax returns one day, and one tax return was for a married couple making $200,000 a year on W-2, and then another return was this guy in Chicago who owned 18 apartment buildings. And even though he made double their income and he was single, he still paid less in taxes than the married couple. And I remember, because I was only 19 at the time, I remember thinking like I was going to get fired or I did something wrong, or what's going on. And my boss goes, "Oh no, it's because he invests in real estate." I go, "Oh, okay. I need to spend the rest of my life figuring out how exactly this works." And it's still no different. I mean, even at Deloitte, a lot of those investment firms, hedge fund syndications, they would take a 15-year loan, IO interest only, and then they'd have a balloon payment at the end. They would never ever pay the balloon payment because they'd always be refinancing the loan after 7 or 8 years. And it's just the way that the wealthy people move and transact is in real estate. The only guy that I know that has a private jet said, you'll make your money in business, but you'll keep it with real estate. And I've always just been honed in on the real estate crowd.
So what do you think has helped you to, I mean, 100,000 in revenue to 3.1 in 4 years is enormous. And there's so many ways we can go, but what do you think is the single most important thing that's helped you to really grow that quickly?
It's the who, not how. It's putting the teams in place to let the business run without you. You see a lot of firm owners that are in that 3 to 500K revenue range where they really don't have a business. They
I
instead really
agree.
have just
Yeah.
a high paying job, right? Because if they decide to take a week off and go on a honeymoon or go on vacation, they're not making money. versus you have to get to that $1 million range and have 4 or 5 employees under you to have the business function somewhat while you're gone, so that you can enjoy what you built in the first place, right? Which is a business and not a job. I would say 90% of accountants just have a high paying job and they don't actually have a real business. So the who, not how is important. I stole a lot from Henry Ford. Henry Ford is a great entrepreneur to follow. If you've ever read his autobiography, there's 2 quotes I'll mention. So in the book, he talks about when he originally created the assembly line to build the Model T, and he had this thing called the 10-80-10 rule, where he knew if he can control the first 10% of the process and like the quality control on the front end and the systems, that he could get other people to do 80% of the work and the production. And then as long as he has, QC, and they drive the cars before they sell them, obviously, and they still do to this day, that that last 10%, he has good quality control on that, he can have 80% of the work done by somebody else, right? And that's the modern day assembly line. And so very similar to what we have. We control the first 10% of our processes. So we're making sure that, client uploads the right docs. We're making sure that we have all the right information. We're putting safeguards and parameters to where we don't make mistakes. And more importantly, we don't let our clients make mistakes either. But then 80% of that work is done, by somebody else. And then the last 10% is delivered typically by like a senior level staff, or I haven't delivered work in a long time, but it can be delivered by that executive figure. It doesn't have to be all the work done by you. And then the other the other thing that I learned from Henry Ford is you have to learn when to be innovative, especially in accounting firms, how they've just been outdated for so long in their systems and their processes. There's a really good quote in the book. He goes, if I would have listened to the opinions of other people, I would have built a faster horse instead
Yeah.
of the car, right? And even when the Model T became a thing, it was a fad. People were like, "Oh, this car thing, we'll be back to horses and carriages in no time," And then when the internet came out, "Oh, this is just a fad," it's not gonna. But we have to be willing and open to change and adoption of new tools, because when new tools come, wealth concentrates to the people that use the tools first, and it's going to be like that for the rest of time. So a lot of people that are not interested or not on AI, you're insane, because AI is going to be it's the next biggest thing if it isn't already. It's the new tool, and when new tools come, wealth concentrates to the people that pick up the tool first.
And how do you see that playing out in the accounting space with AI? Like, what are some of the tactics and strategies you're implementing now within your firm?
So greatest implementation so far is, let's say you have a questionnaire. Client has to answer a bunch of questions related to business activity, rental activity. Um, well, after they fill out the organizer or the questionnaire, it's going to tell them what documents to upload. Hey, you sold a property. You sold 123 Main Street. Well, we need the closing disclosure for that. You sold this. You bought this property. Well, we need the closing statement, and we need the information about your repairs and renovations. AI can do all of that stuff. all of
Yeah,
that all of that data entry it can do. AI can also prepare the damn tax returns too. Um, the
so
only
is,
thing it
yeah,
can't do at this point is defend you in an audit. That's about it.
yeah. So is that something that you are doubling down and investing in within your firm is AI and where the future of it will be?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Cool. So you've had, I mean, as we've talked about some really big growth. When you built your firm, did you build it with the aim that in 5-10 years I want to build a business that doesn't rely on me? Did you have a clear purpose of where you're going, or was it you just went out and it exploded and you're like, this is pretty cool, and just kept evolving and growing?
That first year, I told myself if I could make 150 grand, I'd be set and it'd be worth it. I did not foresee it becoming this big and large, but it's always something that I've had. I've never been complacent, and you can be grateful for the things that you've accomplished and you have, but you can also want a lot more at the same time. And I think that's any a football player wins the Heisman. Not only does he want to win the Heisman, he wants to win the national championship. And then he wants to get into the NFL and win a Super Bowl, right? And so you can be grateful for what you have, but also want so much more at the same time. And that was me. Like I just wanted to make 150 grand that first year, but I did way more than that because I never got complacent. So there's unfortunately there's people in this world that if they only need 5 grand a month to live, right, and they can make $500 an hour, they're like, great, I only need to work 10 hours a month, right? I figured out how to make $500 an hour, and I'm like, how can I work 100 hours a week? Not long term, not forever, but hey, how can I really maximize this thing? That's something that I didn't do when I first started, but it's definitely something to consider when you're building your own firm. Because like as we were talking about, there exists this no man's land between that 500K and $1 million revenue range where you have to make the decision of like, do I want the high paying job that's dependent upon me, or do I want am I willing to sacrifice profit margin to scale to then have a bigger business that's not dependent upon me?
Yeah, 100%. And that's a big part of why we created this podcast. There's so many firms, the majority of the industry, as you said, are under that million and can't get through it. And I think that's the barrier of, high paid job versus running a business. So you've obviously grown your team along the way. What were some of the original hires? So you had no team members, and then you went to 880 odd thousand, and you had 4 team members. What were those first hires that you put on to try and help you to get you off the tools? Who were the who's?
Yeah, the first couple of hires, and this is something I would have spent more time on too, is, not only figuring out, well, how can they help you in your business and what you're doing, but like, what are their goals? Like, what are their aspirations? Because you could spend a year or two hiring somebody, training them, having them be your employee. But if their goal in mind was to go and run their own firm, that may or may not be a problem. I was
Hmm.
okay with that. Because I always told myself that I wanted to build the firm that I wanted to work for. And I couldn't find that at the big four. I couldn't find it anywhere else. So I had to build it myself. Um, the who's, a lot of people will have a bottom up approach when it comes to hiring. So like they'll hire the low, like a lower staff or lowest person, say on the totem pole of like decision making or skill. I decided that that wasn't always the best thing because you want to pay people for their skills, but more importantly, you want to pay people to make decisions on your behalf and for them to be like a trusted agent and make those calls without you being there. And so that's why we hired, a tax manager first, right? That's why I hired the first ever offshore staff member was a CPA, the Philippine equivalent to a CPA, and she went in and hired the team below her to execute the tasks that we were assigning her. And so I would always take the top down approach when it comes to hiring. I hired a sales manager first, then she was able to train the sales reps below her. And I've always taken a top down approach when it comes to hiring. You've hired probably thousands of more people than I have, but um, that's how I've scaled.
I 100% agree. It's how I do all of my business. And I see too many people go bottom up, which is if you're growing slow, it's okay. And if you've got time to develop, but in most cases you don't. So, going from 100,000 to, just under 1 million is significant. A lot of firms don't do that over 20 years. How did you, like, what marketing did you build? Like, how did you attract that many clients?
Yeah, it goes into, so I teach something called the 3 steps to building a personal brand. And one of the steps being you have to become the person of interest at whatever it is that you do.
Hmm.
So it's very similar to, when your friend becomes a realtor, you see on Facebook that they became a realtor and now they're trying to sell you and everybody else a house. Well, it's that like pattern of annoying in a sense of like you want to be known as the person that does that. And so I started commenting in these Facebook groups of real estate investors, and I would just answer tax and financial questions. And it got to the point where people would just tag me in questions and say, I don't know the answer, but this guy Ryan does. And it built from there. I set a timer on my phone for 20 minutes every day just to answer questions in Facebook groups. And it leads into law number. So you want to become the person of interest at whatever it is that you do, right? You want to shout to the rooftops for the entire world. You also want to make your message super clear, right? A lot of firm owners, you see their LinkedIn and their LinkedIn headline doesn't even fit on one sentence. It's a paragraph. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Because And when I'm training people and teaching people how to build funnels and landing pages, I say, look, you should be able to sit your grandma down in front of the screen, and within a minute, she should be at the checkout page, or she should be at the book a call page. Like, if your website is not that easy enough, scrap it and rebuild something else. So it's, what do, who you do it for, and how do you make that message crystal clear so that there's zero confusion as what you do. That's why my LinkedIn headline is, I help real estate investors pay less in taxes, something like that. Super easy to understand. Like, I don't, you want to have a clear message, because a confused mind will never buy. You don't want to confuse people. The second step to that is law of reciprocity. So if people are given something of value, they want to repay the favor. So if people go out doing favors, the person receiving it almost feels indebted to that person, that they went out of their way to help. And so I did that on steroids times a million. I was giving out free templates, lead magnets, the free podcast, free social media, doing webinars. And the entire time, all I was doing was collecting customer information and building goodwill. And the way that you build goodwill is, it's this imaginary bank that every time you do something of value for free, it builds this bank of goodwill. Now, also, whenever you ask for money, it decreases that bank just a little bit. So, but if you give goodwill into affinity, and you give, you never have to ask for money, because people will just naturally want to reciprocate the favor, right? So they'll naturally want to give you back something of value, which is normally, signing up to work at your firm. And so that's law of reciprocity. And then the last thing I would say is, you have to learn how to transfer and receive authority within your niche. So in the real estate environment, a lot of people use the term OPM, other people's money. It's like the next best thing since sliced bread. I like to use OPA, other people's authority. So if I can align myself with a guru or an influencer or somebody in this space, like one of the biggest crypto, if I wanted to be a crypto CPA, I'd go find the guy that's talking about crypto and that's got hundreds of thousands of followers, and become like his right hand person. Any tax questions, I got you answered. You need me to come talk to your community? Done. Don't even say another word. I'm doing it. Because I do that, now whenever they mention me, I don't have to be vetted anymore, because I borrowed their authority, right? So if I go on a big real estate podcast and now I get all these new followers and all this new traffic, I don't have to be vetted as much, because I've already been vetted by the host. So it's borrowing other people's authority in your niche to help build your brand. But I said you have to take it, and you also have to give it. So it's reciprocating the authority, right? So I need to say, hey, here's what I do. I do taxes really well, but you really need to go talk to Nick, because Nick's the best at outsourcing and offshoring and building teams, right? So I have to borrow the authority, and I also have to give it back, because a rising tide will raise all ships. So if I'm attached to somebody, as their brand grows, so does mine, and as my brand grows, so does theirs, because we all rise together. And that's one of the things that I teach that I think has been really helpful in marketing.
So you're young, and I mean, you sort of remind me of myself when I was your age, because I went through a similar journey. How old are you now?
I'm 26 right now.
So when you went out on your own, what were you, 22, 23, when you're learning these, let's just
I think
call it
so.
23-ish. How did you
Yeah.
learn? I mean, you're talking like someone, and I hang out with a lot of business owners that have built, substantial businesses and 9-figure, 8-figure businesses, and they sound just like you. How did you learn what you have at such a young age? Like, where did you go to learn these marketing skills and the craft that you've learned so young?
I stood on the shoulders of giants, you know.
But where would you recommend others that go? Like, if I was wanting to start my own firm, or I've got my own firm and I'm struggling with this whole marketing world and just becoming the authority like you have, like, where did you go and study to learn this craft?
So, like most people, I started learning about it through osmosis. So I had a real estate mentor who got trained and coached by other people who were digital marketers, online marketers, and it got to the point where I was learning so much through osmosis, but I didn't feel like I had it completely figured out. And there's a lesson that I talk about is, sometimes you got to just go straight to the top. Sometimes you got to go straight to the top. If you really want to learn something, you got to learn from the best to do it, right? So that's why I read books. That's why I read books from the top people in the world. I read Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Bezos. I read anything that comes out because I can go straight to the top by learning from them. And it's what I did in similar mastermind formats. So like instead of just buying a couple $1,000 course to learn online marketing or digital marketing, I paid $30,000 to be in the room of online marketers, people who have built $100 million companies off the back of digital marketing. And what's really cool about marketing is the psychological triggers that you would need to sell a plumbing company service, a roof, a CPA firm, to sell taxes, to sell anything. It's all the same. Most people are motivated by the same things. It's just a different vacuum or a different product. And so you can learn, you learn how to sell fear, how to sell an emotion, how to sell into all the worries and all the questions that are running to your prospect's mind. And that's why it's no different depending on what business I'm in. I'm in the business of solving people's problems.
Yeah, I love it. So you've obviously got the skill set of marketing. You mentioned sales team before. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your org structure? So do you have a marketing team? Do you have a sales team? Like how do you, because traditional firms that don't get over the million, they do everything. They wear all the hats. So tell us a little bit about the sales and marketing component of the business.
Yeah, there's three items in any business, no matter what business. And to me, it boils down to this. So the three things that you need to do in any business is number one, you need to have traffic. You need to
Mm,
have somebody that's going to come and buy something from you. So traffic equals marketing. So the more that you market the product, the more traffic you have. But the key to that is it's not just basic generic marketing. It's also how can you leverage what your prospect already has going on in their life and make it a lot easier. So, for example, if you were to open up a hot dog cart in New York City, what would you do to make your hot dog cart stand out against the other ones, right? Because if everybody's selling hot dogs and nobody's selling hot dogs, would you throw in a free Coke? Would you throw in chips with the hot dog? Um, I would put my hot dog next to a starving crowd. I would go put my hot dog stand next to guys that just got out of work, right? So in that case, it's not about the hot dog, it's about the fact that you have a starving crowd. And so
mm,
marketing is positioning of how you're positioning your offer. So you have traffic, which is marketing, you have offer, which is sales. So you have to have a damn good offer. You have to have something that somebody would be dumb to say no to. In fact, they're actually losing money in their business or their real estate or in their taxes by not signing up with you earlier. And so you have traffic, which is marketing, you have offer, which is sales, and then the last thing is fulfillment. Can you deliver on the promises that you have? And for a long time, I was really good at the traffic and the offer part, and not with the fulfillment part, right? So that's why I had to hire a lot of people to do that work. And the fulfillment is also the customer retention, because it's 7 times easier to sell something to somebody that's already bought from you than it is to acquire a new customer. So once you do get that customer, you want to hold on to them for dear life, unless they're being disrespectful or rude to your team or they cross some lines. Like, it is your job as a business owner, marketer, to keep that customer for as long as possible. And the average LTV of a CPA firm is about 10 years. The average CPA keeps
mm.
a client for 10 years. So the margins are there on the back end of an LTV of a customer when you compare it to the cost to acquire a customer, especially if you're doing online marketing, organic marketing. I mean, it costs you $0 to turn the camera on and press record, right? It costs you no money to send out an email, virtually no money to send out an email. But you can get a customer that's going to pay you 30 grand, 40 grand over 10 years. It's insane. Most businesses are at about an 8x cost to acquire a customer versus LTV. Your typical accounting firm is at a 17x cost to acquire a customer versus LTV. I mean, the way that I see it is, if you can figure out digital marketing, which is a skill in itself, and combine it with a service that everybody needs, a starving crowd, a hot dog stand in front of customers, tax firms, right? Because 75% of accountants aren't going to be here in 10 years from now, right?
Mm.
If you can figure out how to pair digital marketing with accounting firms, you're like Tom Brady playing flag football. It is that easy to acquire customers. Um, I hope that kind of gives you a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So what's the one strategy that works the best for you? Is there one strategy that stands out that you doubled down on to get this growth that, obviously now it's a lot more expansive, but what would be, what's that one strategy that you just make sure that you're always doing it because you're always getting the results and reward?
You want to The biggest lesson that I've learned in marketing is you don't want to change the modality of how your prospect interacts on a daily basis. For example, a lot of people are trying to spin up Discord communities or school communities or
Mm.
a LinkedIn newsletter or some type of thing. Well, if your prospect isn't already on those platforms, they ain't gonna move over to there, especially if they haven't paid you money. So you want to like Wayne Gretzky. I'm not skating to where the puck's at. I'm going to skate to where it's going to be. Like you want to be in a Facebook group with a bunch of real estate investors. You want to attend if you're going after physicians and docs, you want to go to the physician and doc conference, right? You don't want to change how your prospect is living their life on a daily basis. 5 billion people have Facebook accounts. Why would you not set up a Facebook group? Why would you not engage in the Facebook groups with your ideal customer avatar? I looked at Austin. I was digging around. Austin's got a Facebook group with 300,000 Austin business owners inside of it for free that you can join. You, if you're an Austin-based CPA, why are you not in there answering questions every damn day? Right? It's free to join. If you're serving real estate investor clients, why would you not join a real estate investor Facebook group that has over 100,000 people in it? You know, um, so you don't want to change. Modality is just a fancy term for how people interact on a daily basis. You don't want to change that. So I see people trying to do the free school group. They're not on school. But here's the lesson: is once they give you money, you could do whatever you want with them. If you want to put them in a WhatsApp, a Slack, we one time we communicate with people through Google Doc. You could do whatever you want once they give you money. Like, but you can't change the modality of how they interact until they give you money. So we have a free Facebook group, 12,000 people as of this recording. Once they give us money, then we move them over to school, right? Because we can do whatever we want with them once they give us money. But until they do, we're just staying where they're already at, which is Facebook.
So with bringing that volume of clients on each year on year, you've got a sales team. Do you have a separate onboarding team, or does it just once I suppose the client comes on board as a client, they get handed over to the fulfillment and delivery team?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's very similar if you ever bought a car from a car dealership. They got the sales team, and then you want to buy the car. Well, let's introduce you to the onboarding team and the paperwork and the financing team, and if you ever like go through that process, it's actually very interesting how they do it, because they each little room or each section is a different team, right? You got the people
Mm.
that'll test drive the car for you. You got the financing department. You got the sometimes they got to call the manager in to make the sale, but it's no different than that. And that's why I say that every employee is a salesperson. People are like, what do you mean? Every single employee is a salesperson, because if the guy that's helping him test drive the car takes him over to the guy from the financing department, and the guy in the financing department is having a bad day, you might have just lost that sale. The financing guy may not be a salesperson, right? Or if they're you're let's say the person's wanting to buy a minivan, and then the onboarding team's like, oh, this great for you. Like I have 2 kids, 3 grandchildren. I lug them around in this minivan all day. But if the person that's onboarding doesn't drive minivans and doesn't have kids, they're not going to relate to that. They're not going to relate to that prospect a lot. So you have to think about every single employee that you have is a salesperson. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a common theme with interviewing firm owners like you that are going through rapid growth. Every single one has got an onboarding team that is separate to the fulfillment team. Now, you mentioned earlier, obviously, with this rapid growth comes the challenges on dealing with it in the back end or the actual fulfillment and delivery. And I've gone through that with many of my businesses. You sell first, you get all these clients on, you make these promises, you genuinely want to fulfill them. And then suddenly you've got so much that, things do fall through the cracks a little bit. What were some of the biggest lessons you learned? Because it's only a short amount of time and huge revenue growth. What were some of the fulfillment lessons you learned on that journey that you wish that you put in place sooner, or Yeah, and that you had there from almost, day one.
Yeah, what seems to be is there's like a fine balance between having the fulfillment process like 100% mapped out.
Mm.
It's kind of like, Mike Tyson says everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? Like if I'm built, like let's say I'm doing a new offer where we're gonna do some strategy calls and then we're gonna help you decide if you should sell or do what with your portfolio. Like if I'm building an entirely new product, um, one of the things I like to do is what's called ghost selling. So, ghost selling is a term where before I even build the offer or the product, I sell it first. And you might be wondering, well, how do you do that? And why
Mm.
would you do that? Is that ethical? Is that moral? Is it right to sell a course before you've ever even created it? And my answer to you is yes.
I agree.
Because
I do exactly
if
the
I
same.
sell it, what I do when I sell it is number one, I get the money to actually go and build the damn thing. But
Mhm.
more so then I'm not, because I've heard, I have friends, other firm owners, I have friends that are other investors, coaches, mentors. They'll spend 9 months building a course that they don't sell anything out of, and they got the headache and the pain of building that and the costs. I'll go on a webinar, pitch it. I haven't even created the damn thing yet. Sell it,
Mm.
and then use the money and the proceeds to then go and build it. But more importantly, what I'm able to do is ask the person what their problem is. Really figure out what it is that they want to learn. And then once I figure out what they actually want to learn, then I put that in the course, or I put that in the process, or I put that in the pipeline or the onboarding pipeline of like what the client actually wants. So I have I wouldn't think too you you don't want to think too long about the fulfillment process. Like you want to have your ducks in a row, but don't think about it way too much to where you don't even do the thing in the first place. And you're going to have, oh, we should send them this message when they upload this document, or we should send them this recording after the call. Like you're going to have those things that you add to the process after, but really just get started. And more importantly, just go sell the thing first to see if there's a demand. That's the best way to see if something is in demand, is go ask people for money for it, before you
And let's
spend all
just
this
assume,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you did that, and you obviously got the client work in. So, what were some of the systems or tools that you put in place to be able to deal with the fulfillment? Because it's a huge amount of work that's come in over that short amount of time. So, was there any specific tools or process or people that you put in place to make that be able to get the work out the door?
Yeah. Yeah. Taxstem is a good client resource management tool that we use for processes and onboarding and things like that. Um, it doesn't replace a marketing CRM though. A lot of people think that
Mm.
Taxstem is your marketing CRM. No, it is not. You need to, before you can even get them into, like people don't get into Taxstem unless they give us money first. Right.
Mm.
So we use, you know, it's a white label of Go High Level, but I call it Double Your Firm. That's like our what we call it, internally is Double Your Firm CRM, where it has everything. It has our email marketing inside of there, the campaigns. It has the landing pages, the funnels, the SMS marketing. I have 15 phone numbers in this Go High Level, and it costs me like $200 a month. I see firms similar size that are spending 90, $100,000 on office supplies and phones. Like, what are you spending that much money on? Go High
Mm.
Level is literally $300 a month. It like, but we run everything out of Go High Level. It has all of our templates, emails. So, for example, we're running a campaign right now. Um, the We have like an investor challenge going on, and so we're teaching them bookkeeping, legal, tax. And what's really cool about it is the more emails they click on, the more emails they get. So they just go down this like rabbit
Mm.
hole of, hey, if you open that email and you engage with it, you're gonna get another one fired right up. And then if you engage and you click on enough, it's gonna ask you for money. It's gonna ask if you want to take the next step. It's funny, they did a. Do you know what the number one trade of somebody that's gonna buy a book on Amazon is?
What?
They bought a book on
No.
Amazon last week. So if people are opening and engaging in your emails, you want to know that. Because if you open 3 of my emails in a row and you're engaged, I'm going to send you something that might ask you for money, or it might ask you to book a call with our team to see if we can help you solve the problem that you have.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, having that dialed in is obviously key. How have you found scaling your team along with the business? Do you hire in advance? Are you hiring in arrears? Like how? Because you've gone from a team of nothing to a team of 14 and high revenue per team member. has been maintained along that, that 4-year journey. How have you scaled your team along to keep up with the pace of the business?
I feel as if most of the time you'll never be in the perfect place in terms of head count
Mm.
versus revenue that's coming in the door. But if I had it one way or the other, like I would always prefer to be a little bit overstaffed than understaffed. Um, I guess it kind of depends on the multiples that you're running at. Like I wouldn't go hire a bunch of people for a product that you haven't tested the waters and see if it's something that you actually people will actually buy. So like when I released our new offer, which is our tax strategy 365 service, I was the one selling it myself. I was the one doing the fulfillment myself for the most part until I figured out, well, hey, I just had 100 people buy this at 5K a pop. I should probably figure out how to scale this thing, right? Well, I'm gonna go hire a salesperson to take all these calls. So instead of only doing 40 or 50 calls a month, now we're doing 100 calls a month, sales calls a month, because I could have somebody focus on the sales, and now Ryan can just focus on the fulfillment. Oh, we're onboarding 30 people a month at $5,000 minimum into the service. Ryan's doing all the fulfillment. Well, gee, now I need to go hire somebody to replace me and go do this so that they could take on the 30 clients a month and I could step out and pour more fuel on the fire, which is the marketing, the top of the funnel. So now instead of getting 100 book calls a month, we're getting 200 book calls a month and everything's flowing through, right?
So,
More book calls, more fulfillment. Sorry.
yeah, and so are you going to continue this rapid growth in the future years, and how do you think about balancing growth with profitability and obviously the time that you're investing to build a business that can run and sustain without you longer term?
So somebody told me one time is there's two different banks. So you have what's called your current bank, which is the cash flow that you're making now, which mostly comes off of any like high ticket coaching, mentorship, consulting, any like high ticket value service. That's normally like your cash flow today that you're going to eat off of. But then you have this thing called the future bank, and the future bank is this business, this asset that you're building for the long term, right? So that's the recurring revenue every single year in the tax prep or the bookkeeping side of the business or the recurring customers. So you have your current bank and you have your future bank, and you're building both banks at the same time. But now once I've crossed that multi-million dollar mark, my mindset goes to future bank. Like, how can I keep as many customers as possible, get them paying the most amount of money, so that way I could exit or I could sell for more a higher multiple. So you have some services that are made primarily for cash flow and like current bank, and then there's other parts of your service line that are more built for the future bank. Because in most accounting firms, you're going to make 50% of the money that you'll ever make while you're running the firm. And if you build a firm to sell, you're going to make the other 50% of money when you go to sell it, right? So for example, if I have a $3 million revenue firm that's netting a million over 3 years, I would have made $3 million net, right? But that firm, let's just say it sells for 3x EBITDA, that firm would also sell for 3 million. So I'm making 3 million when I run the thing, and I'm making 3 million when I sell it. And right now I'm focused on increasing that back end. Like, how can I get that revenue uh, multiple to be higher, that EBITDA multiple to be higher?
And I think that's a key point, because a lot of firm owners that don't get through that $1 million mark, it's because they get to this 500,000 to 700,000. They got, one or two employees. They're making what they see as reasonable money, but they don't want to go backwards to get through that next barrier, which then the money becomes 2, 3, 4 times that in profit, but they can't see how to get there because they don't have the skill. What do you say to anyone that is in that, I'm comfortable, I'm earning, 2, 3, 400 grand. I think that's, really good, and I could do this for the next 20 years, to go, no, punch through it and actually grow a business, not something that's just a team around you.
I mean, there's different takes depending on where you're at. Obviously, I'm a lot younger, so I have
Mm.
more like appetite for risk and being able to take chances. And if something doesn't work out, I can recover from it. Whereas somebody that's has 3 or 4 kids already, like they can't afford to take as big of risk as you can. But you're the most qualified person to do the job that you're doing as it currently sits. Just like if you You were once overweight, you're qualified to help somebody that is overweight now. That's why the first step of AA is to find a mentor. So you're more qualified to do what you're doing than you think you are. A lot of people have that. What do they call it? What's the limiting belief? The imposter syndrome. They have
Yep.
the imposter syndrome that they can't scale their firm to 500 to a million. Well, people have done it before, and you won't be the last person to do it either. And so, but I totally understand if they don't want to scale, but from a monetary perspective and a lifestyle perspective, I also see the pros to scaling, because like we mentioned before, that sub five, that 500K or below range, you don't have, in my opinion, you don't have a business. It's really just a high paying job, which is fine. But if you want to have a business that runs for you while you're not in the business, you can go play golf for a week and nothing happens. Then you have to get to that $1 million mark as quick as possible and build yourself a business instead of a high paying job.
Yeah, 100%. Ryan, I could talk to you all day and all night. I'm super inspired by the journey that you've gone through. And look, we've only covered off a little bit, but we'll put your contact details in the show notes. What's anyone that wants to watch your journey and get inspiration from it, what's the best social channel for them to, follow along and watch your journey?
Yeah, if you want to get in direct contact with me, shoot me a connection request on LinkedIn. It's just my first name, last name, CPA. Make sure you grab my 5 laws of marketing also too. Don't worry, you'll get sent it if you send me a connection request. But if you're looking to see what I'm doing on the scaling the firm side, go check out my Facebook group, Tax Strategies for Real Estate Investors. It's free on Facebook. We got over 12,000 investors in there. If you want to see how I'm marketing to them and selling to them on that platform.
Yeah, Ryan, congratulations on what you've built so far. I'm certainly excited to watch your journey in the future years and continue your evolution and growth. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on socials so you don't miss the next episode.